Welcome to Adventures in TV Land, a movie review edition. For today's Adventure in TV Land, we're going to give a short commentary, synopsis review of Death on the Nile, starring Kenneth Branagh as Hercule Poirot. I probably mispronounced that. But Branagh returns I believe it was 2017, the first movie with him as Agatha Christie's famous detective, Murder on the Orient Express, that was released. And in that film, I really enjoyed that movie. Now, just a little bit about my background with Agatha Christie. I've only read one, I take that back, I've only read one Agatha Christie novel, and that was 10 Little Indians, aka And Then There Were None. I've also read that play, and I directed that play. Now, I have seen a lot of Agatha Christie mysteries in various television shows, because there was the Miss Marple series. I've seen some of that. I've seen some other episodes, works based off of Agatha Christie stories, but I had not seen any of her famous novels, any of the famous movie adaptations of Murder on the Orient Express are now this recently released, which was delayed basically a year, almost 2 years, over 2 years, I guess, because of the pandemic. But Death on the Nile, I had not read either one of those novels, but I did enjoy Murder on the Orient Express. I know took things a little bit differently that takes place on the novel. There were some changes, and they added some things, subtracted some things. That happens almost every time something is adapted. It happens almost every time something is adapted that's already been adapted before, because people try to bring something new to the stories, make the characters fresh, make the story a little bit fresher. Now, based on some reviews I have read about the newest film, Death on the Nile, there are some changes, there's some characters that have been added, some situations, of course, that have been switched around. But as someone who has not read that novel before, and who has not seen a previous adaptation, I really enjoyed the film. Now, I will say this, I figured out the murderer early on, fairly early on. I guess I've seen enough detective shows, and I've started to figure out, because Agatha Christie and her stories, things aren't as they always seem. There's always something that happens, there's a twist. Sometimes a twist, it's totally something you don't expect at all. That you couldn't even, such as in 10 Little Indians, you could not see that twist happening, but it does, it happens. In Death on the Nile, things just aren't what they appear to be. But I did figure it out early on. I did enjoy the acting. There's once again an all-star cast, as there was in Murder on the Orient Express. A lot of famous actors and actresses in the film. So Annette Bening is in it, as well as Gal Gadot and many other people. There's a returning character, the guy who played Book in Murder on the Orient Express. He is returned for this film, so he's in it. He's one of the characters that's not in the original story, so he was added in. Basically, what happens is, Lynette is the woman's name. She is a very wealthy woman. She falls in love with this gentleman who was originally to be engaged to a very good friend of hers. They are married within the course of just a few weeks later. But she doesn't try, other than her husband and a couple other people, they're having to celebrate this very long honeymoon voyage in Africa, and she doesn't trust anyone around her, and she wants Poirot to basically keep an eye out and see, because she doesn't trust anyone, to make sure nothing bad happens. Well, bad things do happen. Death happens. Murder happens, of course. And several characters are murdered during the course of the film. And It's all these deaths take place as this boat is sailing down the Nile River. Now, I'm not for sure how it is with the story, but I really did the thing other than I did like the setting. I liked it because it kind of had a 1920s vibe set in Egypt, but even though the movie is set in the mid 1930s, I did like the way things are set. It was like a carryover effect from the Roaring '20s, and it kind of transported that, watered down a little bit, but set on this steamship floating down the Nile River during the mid 1930s. Because most of the people involved, most of the characters, not all of them, but they all come from wealth at one point, and so they're very opulent. And even though some of them one of the characters lost their wealth during the stock market crash, other ones they still have that. There's still that opulence going on. Now, there's been some people have criticized the movie because it doesn't think it portrays all the the bad things that were going on in the world and the life of the Egyptians and all this other thing. That didn't bother me at all, because this is a movie. You have to understand where it's taking place, who the characters are there in this film, in this setting. Like I said, I'm not familiar with the original story, so I can't speak about that. But for this setting, for this film, I thought it worked. It fit, because these are mostly wealthy people, and at that time period, some of those problems they would go unnoticed. They wouldn't realize those things for the most part. What I liked probably most, other than the acting and the story as a whole, which is very good, of course, is Agatha Christie mystery, Agatha Christie story based on Agatha Christie story. So it is going to be a very good story, but I loved the soundtrack. Had a great soundtrack, amazing soundtrack. I highly recommend it. Loved the songs, the bluesy songs that were in the film, the company, everything. Thought it was really well done. So if you enjoy mystery stories, now if you're already familiar with Death on the Nile and have seen previous versions, you may not like this film. I don't know. I've not seen any other previous incarnations before, so I don't have the comparison to it. I've not read the novel, so I don't have that comparison. If you've seen it in the, like, for instance, the 1978 movie that had, I can't even think of her name now, but Murder, She Wrote, the woman that was in it, the star of Murder, She Wrote. If you've seen that film or any of the other films, like the episode that they based on this story that was in the television series of POIROT, and if you've seen this movie, let me know what you think in the comments. Did you like the film? Did you not like the film? What did you like? What did you not like? Let me know. Let's kind of get some communication going and a chit chat about that. But personally, I did like the movie. I'd recommend it for people who enjoy mystery stories. I thought it was pretty well done. Very well acted. Had a great cast, great soundtrack. I know there's some people, they don't like Kenneth Branagh because, he became somewhat famous because he adapted Shakespeare for the masses. A lot of critics, they didn't like that because he made, in the late 90s, early 2000s, he made Shakespeare actually interesting. People were interested in Shakespeare because of Kenneth Branagh. They were watching Shakespeare movies and going back and reading his plays because he made them popular at that time. And those films, they still are popular. A lot of them, they still, even though they've been changed, certain things have been changed or whatever, they are still relevant. He does the same thing here with these films, with the POIROT films. So I don't mind that as much, because this is a story that can be done that with. It's a different incarnation. It's a different telling. The heart of the story is the same, from what my understanding. It's just, some characters have been switched around, certain things here and there, a few things added. But that happens for almost any movie adaptation of a book. So I give it 2 thumbs up. Recommend it. So that's my commentary, my review, my thoughts on just a couple hours after seeing Death on the Nile. Hope you've liked this video. If you have, give it a hit that like button. If you've disliked it, go ahead and hit that dislike button. If you've enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel for further content and ring that bell for email notifications. Thank you for watching. Until next time, that's a wrap.